Welcome to my Tuesday news update. I'm experimenting with a different approach to basically everything, I think, at this point. Or at least changing things up. It's definitely a very transitional time. I have been thinking a lot differently about how I approach what I live stream and how I do it. And so I've recently discovered a new app platform that allows me to multicast directly from my handheld devices, which I didn't have the the capacity to do before, and that kind of just happened to fall into place in the last few weeks. So it's really compelled me to rethink how I approach everything, and so it's been a very transitional space these last few weeks. And I've also transitioned away from doing a more of a kind of creative entertainment series to just doing more kind of educational series of being out in nature and the rivers and the lakes and the shores, and just bringing home the value of natural environments and what that means for conservation and what it also means for climate change. And so I've been experimenting a lot with these different formats and tools and modes to get this information to folks and to create a way that makes it interesting and engaging, and with varied levels of success. And so it's really been an experimental phase for me these last few weeks, and even this last year. I think I've really conceptualized live streaming as something that I'm doing from home, and being very home focused and kind of home studio focused, but now thinking about how to do a whole set of field excursions to base the whole my whole approach to production. So it's been very interesting for me, because I have gotten quite comfortable with staying home in this quarantine. I'm very comfortable staying home and working on creative pursuits. And so now this is really pushing me to get out and to spend more time, not just outside, but to actually get into my vehicle and travel to places where I can then, broadcast something interesting of what's going on, whatever it is. And I have just gotten very comfortable with not driving places. So it's a little bit of I have to compel myself to, there has to be a really good incentive. Where am I going? Is it going to be, as the nature, the natural attraction, the attraction of nature has to be compelling enough for me to actually get in the car and drive. So this is it's very interesting, and it's very interesting to be experiencing this kind of transformative experience as a creative who has some more natural science things to communicate in a time where we're coming out of this quarantine phase of a pandemic that has got us all very public health conscious, very health conscious, and very much thinking about the intersections of public health and climate change and climate adaptation and all of these different pieces that really can fit together in a way that can transform our societies in the way that we need and have needed for quite some time. And so I'm finding that I'm kind of stepping out in a lot of different ways. And it's really quite refreshing. I wasn't expecting it to be so coherent, all of this to suddenly start to really fall into place for me, with the experiments with live stream, the experiments with doing video from all of my various devices to whatever capacity they could actually do video, that they could actually hold video, because video files are quite large and moving them around can get cumbersome. And so I think at this phase I've actually set myself up pretty well to integrate the arts and the science, and to really start to take it to the next level. And one of the things that has really compelled me to think about how to take it to the next level is discovering this new app that I found, and I will let's see if I can bring this up. Doo-doo-doo. And it's this here, which is the haps.tv, and it's a very, very new platform. It's got very like dedicated developers that engage the people that use it on an almost daily basis. It's really quite a community that they're cultivating, which is nice. It's kind of a nice change of pace than just joining an app and there's just kind of like a bunch of folks that are using the app, but there's really no developers to be found. There's nobody to really interact with. And with Haps, that is a really amazing change of pace, is to be directly interacting with the people who are managing the platform and further developing it and making the changes that make it better. And so that and the fact that you can multicast from this platform has really changed how I think about what I'm doing. And because they kind of developed this platform with the intention of really supporting the work of journalists, it really has compelled me to think more carefully about what it is that I'd like to achieve with with the live stream and bringing in multimedia and really, trying to convey knowledge about a region. Currently is what I'm really focused on is trying to convey knowledge about a region and in a stewardship sort of sense. So in the Great Lakes region, and of course I'm in the Lake Erie Basin, so I am very focused on the Lake Erie Basin, and I am particularly inclined to work on a watershed level, so kind of going by watershed. And of course I'm really I'm very much embedded in my own watershed, and sometimes I have to like push myself to remember that there are other watersheds out there. It's not just the one Huron River. And I think the allure of rivers is that there's just so much to discover about a single river because it just goes on, and so there's so many riverbanks to explore. And so it's really easy to get lost in a single watershed. And so so I've been pushing myself to explore more of the watersheds, River Raisin especially, and even the Red Cedar recently, which is actually Lake Michigan watershed, part of the Greater Grand River watershed. So that's been a particularly fun exercise, especially because there's just so much water data already out there to kind of pull into what you're viewing and seeing and experiencing out in the world. And so that's been a very interesting exercise for me. And so because I'm on the Western Basin side, the Michigan side of the Western Basin of Lake Erie, I've got lots more focus on the Michigan side just because it's easier to capture all that in a day trip. And so that's generally what I'm broadcasting, but I'm hoping to get more, especially now that it's warm. It went from like snowing a week ago to almost 80 degrees today. So now it's time that I can, really start thinking about getting out on the shores further away and spending, more time, along the Ohio Lake Erie shoreline, which is quite extensive, and eventually on the Canadian side of the lake when we're allowed to go there again. And so that's the plan. And, eventually I will broadcast from, entirely around Lake Erie, and then probably Lake Ontario will be next. But who knows? It's really, I try to weave this into my life and however my life happens to unfold, which isn't always necessarily predictable. So, but that's kind of my, that's the vision, that's the mindset that I've got. And so that's my approach. And so I invite you to, to follow me along on this haps.tv. That's I think where a lot of my field broadcasts will come from, is haps.tv, and then multicast to the other platforms, which sometimes works well and sometimes, is the signals gets to be a little bit strangled, so it's not as the quality isn't as good. But then also like kind of doing some more informal field observation captures through Twitter Live, which is where Periscope actually migrated to, was to Twitter Live, and it's still, I think, technically a native Periscope application that has now just been folded into the Twitter Live branding. So I will continue to do that, and that I have my new Twitter handle at Dawn.Earth for those kind of more informal broadcasts. And the Haps.tv will be the more kind of formal, polished podcast. So that's basically where I'm at. I do think that I will probably figure out some kind of like creative broadcast to fit into the mix of things over the summer months. I was doing a Saturday night one, but that got to be a little much. It's a little much to commit to every Saturday. So I'll figure out another version of that, I think. I always kind of thought of that When the Mood Strikes Midnight Saturday night excursion version as a Saturday night version, so I might do like another version of it, but I guess technically it has to happen at midnight because that's the name of the program, so rather beholden to an hour. And so that's what I got. And I think that I'm gonna probably pop in, maybe not every Tuesday, but probably most Tuesdays, and just give an update of what's going on and kind of what my active projects are, and hopefully make some headway on this documentary that I've had on the back burner now for over a year because I couldn't quite figure out how to work on it under quarantine. But I'm hoping now that with some vaccine just distribution, that things will get a little bit easier to figure out how to finagle and manage. And so maybe hopefully soon, within like the next month or two, I'll have some updates on that project as well. So thank you for tuning in to my studio news update, the Tuesday news as I call it, and I will continue to work on my various integrations to my live stream, get better and better as I go. So until next time, I will see you later. All right, thanks so much. Take care.